For the last century, the global power chessboard was dominated by a single substance hidden deep beneath the Earth's crust. Empires rose and fell on the backs of oil fields. In modern borders were aggressive drawn specifically to control the flow of fossil fuels. However, the era of the petroleum superpower is quietly drawing to a close, replaced by a much more fundamental necessity. Water is no longer just a shared natural resource. It has become the absolute baseline for human survival and a top-tier driver of international conflict. Munich Security Report 2026 addressed water for the first time as a significant geopolitical risk. And Eurasia Group now ranks water among the world's top 10 geopolitical risks for the year. While oil was a luxury of industrial mobility, fresh water is the essential requirement for agriculture, manufacturing, and state stability. The modern world relies on roughly 260 to 300 major transboundary river basins that serve as shared arteries of life. These basins cover nearly half of the Earth's surface and support an estimated 40 to 50% of the global population. According to Circle of Blue's 2026 water power analysis, more than half of the world's 310 international river basins still lack cooperative management agreements, and nearly 60% of these basins have no formal, legally binding water sharing treaty at all. Key global powers, including both the United States and China, have never even ratified the 1997 UN Watercourses Convention, the closest thing the world has to a global rulebook for shared rivers. Unlike climate change, water has no standing global negotiation process with binding targets or enforcement. There have been only 2 UN water conferences in the past 50 years, with the third scheduled for December 2026. This creates a vacuum of authority where geography, not law, dictates survival. A dam built across a river by an upstream nation can function as a more effective strategic lever than a fleet of warships. A new era of international leverage, sometimes called hydro-hegemony, is emerging as upstream nations use their geographic position to influence weaker downstream neighbors. One of the clearest examples is the Mekong River, which originates high on the Tibetan Plateau. While it serves as the agricultural lifeblood for an estimated 60 million people across Southeast Asia, its headwaters, known in China as the Lancang, sit entirely in Chinese territory. China currently operates a cascade of 11 major dams on the mainstream Lancang River, with additional dams planned, giving Beijing significant control over seasonal flow into Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Research shows these dams have fundamentally altered the river's natural flood drought cycle, trapping sediment that downstream farmers and fisheries depend on, and at times worsening dry season droughts in the lower Mekong. To be fair, Chinese operators argue the dams also release stored water during droughts. During the severe 2019 drought, Lancang dams reportedly released roughly 30% more water than natural inflow. But the larger point stands. A country with no binding treaty obligations now controls the timing and volume of water for 5 downstream nations. Nile River Basin represents one of the most closely watched water flashpoints on Earth. Egypt depends on the Nile for an estimated 95 to 97% of its freshwater supply. When Ethiopia built the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, now Africa's largest hydroelectric project, it created what Cairo considers an existential risk. This is no longer a hypothetical. As of September 9th, 2025, Ethiopia officially inaugurated the fully completed GERD. The dam's reservoir holds 74 billion cubic meters of water, and the plant has a generating capacity of over 150 megawatts, more than doubling Ethiopia's domestic electricity output. Egypt and Sudan sent no senior officials to the inauguration. Egypt's foreign ministry immediately sent a letter to the UN Security Council, calling Ethiopia's actions unlawful and unilateral. No binding operational agreement governing the dam's behavior during droughts has ever been signed. Only a non-binding 2015 Declaration of Principles. Within weeks of the dam's inauguration, record Nile flooding displaced families in Sudan and inundated parts of Egypt's Nile Delta, with Cairo blaming chaotic water releases from GERD allegations Ethiopia denies. In January 2026, President Trump personally wrote to Egypt's President Sisi, offering to mediate the dispute, a sign of how seriously Washington now takes the standoff. For elections, Egyptian officials have previously and openly discussed the possibility of military action to protect their water supply, underscoring how a hydroelectric dam has become a matter of national security calculus, not just engineering. In the Indus River Basin, a slow-moving crisis is unfolding between two nuclear-armed neighbors, India and Pakistan. The Indus Waters Treaty, signed in 1960, survived multiple wars between the two countries for over 6 decades, making it one of the most durable water agreements in history. But research from Blue Water Intelligence shows the Indus Basin has recorded 215 separate water conflict events between 1948 and 2022, making it one of the most conflict-intensive transboundary systems on the planet. The treaty was negotiated in a different climate era, and it was never built to handle what's happening now. Rapidly melting Himalayan glaciers creating a volatile, unpredictable cycle of flash floods followed by prolonged droughts. Because the river's headwaters sit largely within Indian-administered territory, New Delhi holds significant geographic leverage in the relationship. Tensions escalated sharply when Indian leadership invoked the now widely cited line that blood and water cannot flow at the same time. For Pakistan's heavily Indus-dependent agricultural economy, any Yunnan upstream alteration of flow is treated as a matter of national security, illustrating how even a treaty that survived real wars can buckle under climate stress and political will. While human survival is the most visible water concern, modern digital economy is hitting its own hydrological wall. High-tech manufacturing requires enormous volumes of ultra-pure water to wash away microscopic debris during semiconductor fabrication. A single advanced chip fab can consume an estimated 2 to 4 million gallons of this specialized water per day. The AI boom is compounding the strain. Hyperscale data centers use water-intensive cooling systems to prevent processors from overheating under sustained computation-aid load, with industry estimates putting consumption at billions of gallons annually across the global data center footprint. Even the renewable energy transition isn't water neutral. Lithium extraction in South America's arid lithium triangle, Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, requires pumping millions of liters of water from already stressed local aquifers, sparking resistance from indigenous communities whose water tables are being depleted. The Sulan Isimpu, the technology is meant to define the next century, AI, line clean energy, advanced computing, all run on a resource that is becoming scarcer by the year. The center of gravity in global power is shifting from algorithms and oil reserves toward the control of physical water flow. The international community has spent decades building frameworks to regulate trade and carbon emissions, while largely leaving the world's unmanaged transboundary rivers to bilateral horse trading or no agreement at all. As population growth and industrial computing demand converge with accelerating climate instability, the stability of entire regions may increasingly be measured by a simple ancient metric: who controls the river and who doesn't. We are entering an era where water functions as a currency of national security and global statecraft, not metaphorically, but operationally. In dam negotiations, UN Security Council letters, and presidential mediation offers, the defining question for 21st century diplomacy may no longer be only about who owns the data or the oil. The world must now ask, can nations build durable, enforceable frameworks for water cooperation before the struggle over who controls the tap escalates into the resource wars of tomorrow.